Hello and welcome to the latest edition of Here for Good, where we explore how transformational leaders create a positive impact on the world around them. Throughout history, inspirational leaders and organizations have always used the power of words to connect with emotion, galvanize communities, and enlist others in causes for change and good. At Virtua Health, we are changing the way people think and talk about health and well-being. So it is our privilege to tee up meaningful conversations with engaging social catalysts and thought leaders. Please welcome our host, Dennis Pullin, President and CEO of Virtua Health, as he sparks today's exciting conversation.
My guest today understands the importance of community, and that's because Senator Troy Singleton has deep roots in southern New Jersey. It's where he was raised, and it's where he became involved in labor unions. It's the community he represented for 6 years in the General Assembly and is currently serving as a state senator. He was married in that community, and along with his wife, it's where he's raising his children. With such deep roots, he understands what binds a community together, as well as the challenges a leader must help a community overcome so it can remain vibrant. Senator, welcome to Here for Good.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
You know, it seems like you haven't strayed far from home. Tell me, what's kept you in South Jersey all this time?
Well, first of all, there's no better place that I'd rather be. Having born in Philadelphia but lived the majority of my life in southern New Jersey, it is just a tie that binds me to this area. It's like my family's been here, has been raised here. There's the constitution of the people here. They're like my people. No matter what your outward look is, it's a certain ambiance that comes with being a Philadelphia, Tri-County kind of South Jersey kid.
But what is it that you think makes it attractive to outsiders?
Well, you know what? It's because our South Jersey area and New Jersey as a whole has so much to offer. So you got cities, you got the suburbs, the leafy suburbs, you got the beaches. You can go from different climates and different regions all by just driving around a little bit. And South Jersey to me has always been home because it's that homey feeling. Like when I was a kid, I grew up in a section of Philadelphia called Germantown before we moved to southern New Jersey. And we would drive to Wildwood. That was our summer hangout all the time, my family. We would drive to Wildwood. And even before we got to Wildwood, where we'd get on the beaches and hang out on the boardwalk, we'd go to the Echelon Mall. And I remember thinking that Voorhees was like the Taj Mahal, so to speak, just coming from a row home in Philadelphia. And it's something about the communities that are here, because having grown up in a big city before we moved here, these communities would be just neighborhoods in the city that I grew up in. But each of these communities, though have an intrinsic link together, they're all so different, and each has a different quality.
And it sounds like it's just something that gets in your blood and stays there.
Yeah.
And speaking of that, it seems like labor unions, it's been a part of your life for decades. What lessons have these unions taught you that you can apply to your role as a legislator?
Well, the foundation of it comes from both my father and my grandmother. My grandmother worked as a cleaning lady, was a shop steward for her union as a cleaning lady who cleaned the buildings in Philadelphia, business buildings, some of the hotels as well. And my dad was a teamster, worked at Charles Jackman's Liquor Distillery. And what they taught me as far as working in organized labor is that together we all can achieve more. That idea of team together and trying to find ways to build up everybody to make everyone successful. And I think about that when I look at public policy and the ideas that I work on. And the whole focus on the public policy that I do is not to try and benefit any one class of folks, any one particular person or entity, but to find ways that uplifts everybody. That adage of rising tide lifts all boats, it's a truism. And if you embody it, if you put it into your core and how you go about doing your business, then it becomes a reality if you look at public policy in that way to try and effectuate change where everyone can be successful.
So do you think, given the current environment, that labor unions are as important today as they were in yesteryears?
Without a doubt. And let me take a step back. So think about it from just a pure economic standpoint. One of the things that helped elevate so many folks into the middle class as we once knew it, it's a struggle these days, but as we once knew it, was their involvement in organized labor. I remember my family and looking at how my family were able to grow and move from a row home to a single family home in Willingboro, New Jersey, where my formative years were. It was solely because of the labor union and the collective bargaining agreement that my father worked on, that we were able to take the benefits of to move forward. And now when you start seeing the change as respect to the economic uncertainty that so many folks have and the corporatization of our world in a large degree, with less labor unions, you start to see the economic impact sort of lessen for folks' lives. So the income inequality gap has spread, and as that spread, I think it's no coincidence the number of union households in our country have shrunk. I think they correlate directly.
No, but as a legislator, so you represent a wide range of people.
Yeah.
How do you reconcile their similarities and differences to best serve them?
That's a great question. And that's always a daily struggle, right? That is a daily challenge because I represent one of the most affluent areas of our state in Morristown, New Jersey, and I also represent one of the tougher socioeconomic areas in Beverly, New Jersey, and Burlington and Willingboro and places like that. Mm-hmm. All that being said, you got to be genuine in both places. So you can't have one message in one spot and a different one in another because you get found out pretty quick when you're not doing it right. But more importantly, within all that, there are certain similarities that we all have. We all want to live in safe neighborhoods.
Correct.
We all want to make sure our kids have great educational opportunity to help elevate or perhaps change their station in life. Those are the things that is agreement no matter what your zip code is. So you can find common ground to try and work on those issues. It may nuance and the hue of it may be a little different, but the underlying core is we all want to feel safe. We want to make sure our children have a bright future, and we want to be able to live the fulfillment of our own personal American dream. And as a representative democracy, it's my responsibility to help steward that through the public policy choices I make on behalf of the 226,000 bosses I have in the 7th District.
Because those values aren't dictated by zip code. It's universal. No. Everybody wants that.
Absolutely. And I say that to my colleagues. Sometimes, as you can imagine, the toxicity of our politics makes it hard to have honest and forthright conversations. But I try and remind them that whether you are in a rural area, urban area, suburban area, those sort of basic values and principles about safety for our family and growing economic opportunity and educational attainment, we all share. So we can wrap ourselves around that. We may have different paths to get us there, and we can find the consensus path, but we cannot shy away from the fact that we all have that same beliefs. And in an indifferent world, it's our challenge to be a difference in this indifferent world. And we can do that by having more conversations together and moving forward.
So I'm going to take you back to a word that you just said, toxicity. A lot of us have described sort of the political discord at the national level as just that, toxic.
Yeah.
So how do you navigate differences while still being able to remain constructive?
That's a great question. And some of it is built on the foundation that in New Jersey especially, every year there's an election for something, right? So every year there's someone running for something in New Jersey. And I think the way the structure of our politics are, too many folks try and scare you into not voting for your opponent rather than lift your spirits and give you hope in voting for them. And I decry the idea of trying to scare you to vote for my opponent.
So that's the negative campaigning.
And it is. And the negative campaigning has become a bedrock, unfortunately, of modern day politics. And I think part of that is because so many people are afraid, and I say that not tongue in cheek, but are afraid to put their ideas out for merit and scrutiny and allow their neighbors to make a choice between person A and person B. And for me, when you think about it in that concept, you have to think of the dearth of your ideas must be so great that I'd rather scare you into not voting for my opponent than to actually talk to you about my vision. And on our national level especially, and to a lesser degree on the state level, but on our national level especially, individuals are really just trying to scare one another and scare the electorate. And it's oftentimes with misinformation, trying to scare the electorate into not supporting someone else, rather than just saying, here's my vision, here's what I believe in, and allow a voter to make that honest decision.
Do you think that same scenario keeps good individuals from wanting to step up and being public servants and running for offices and things of that nature?
Then it's deeper than that. It's not just that we don't get enough good people who want to run. We get good people who feel like they don't even want to be a part of the electoral process by voting.
Right.
Like they sit back and says it doesn't matter. And if you think of the cynicism we have in government today, it is borne out by the numbers. Elections, I think, are like in the most recent ones have been 20-some-odd%, 30% of the electorate turning out. And just think of that in just a math perspective.
I do the math on the economics of it in terms of the cost associated for some of those elections. And then when you have such poor voter turnout, you just sort of wonder, where is the disconnect?
We have a third, on a good day, a third of the electorate who've now made a decision for everyone else to deal with. And if you think about, even look at that third is not truly a true microcosm of the diversity and vibrancy of our state. So we have such a small number of folks who are now making a decision on what the public policy and the people who are in these positions look like. And for me, I talk about civic engagement constantly, not just at election time, not just when I'm running. I talk about it all the time because the biggest truism in politics that some folks have forgotten, and frankly, it's because a lot of elected officials and politicians have made them easy to forget, is that
by design?
By design.
Okay.
Is that the power of the individual in their vote is the only way, it's always been the only way to truly change the direction of our country. And if you think about it, bullets won't change it. No. Screaming and yelling by itself won't change it, but advocacy is important. But if you're not at the ballot box making an effective change about who sits in these seats and who pulls those levers of power, then it sort of regurgitates and you see the same old thing happening. And that's the frustration, especially nationally. Then when you look at the redistricting and the gerrymandering of certain districts, if you never have to talk to someone who doesn't think exactly as you, then your issues and your ideas are going to be this herd mentality that everyone thinks the same.
Absolutely.
And we got districts that are constructed around our country just that way. So folks feel like, you know what, as long as I'm talking to this 10% or 20% and I can satisfy them, I'm going to get reelected.
Yes.
And that's not the way to do public policy.
Well, let's talk about you and some of your legislative priorities. I think you have many, but I'd like to maybe highlight one or two.
Sure.
In particular, your focus on domestic violence and animal abuse. Tell me, how do you bring people together to sort of address these issues in particular?
So the focus on domestic violence is intensely personal to me. My family broadly has been touched by domestic violence, has been a scourge on my family, like I'm sure it's been a scourge on others. And when I've seen it, and I know the effects that it's had on me, and I know its effects it's had on other family members, and I think about our next generation of folks, and you think about this cycle that folks see of learned behavior, and if folks see men or women being hands-on to their partner and doing that, then that next generation feels, well, that's okay. That's how I settle an argument with my boyfriend or settle an argument with my girlfriend.
Because that's what they know. That's what they know. They've seen.
And they see it. And for me, in order for us to break this cycle, for us to understand that true love shouldn't hurt, physically hurt, you have to get in there and start talking to people and educating them on why we need to walk away from that path. So I've spent a great deal of time trying to look at this issue. And the impetus for one of the first legislative initiatives that I did, I'm married, I get elected. My wife says to me, she said, hey, I want to tell you this story. And the story was about her college sorority sister, a woman named Lisa Zindel, who lived in Monmouth County, Ocean County, And Lisa, vibrant, exciting young woman, community leader, was engaged to a guy and started to see the warning signs that maybe this wasn't going to work for her. And sort of started to pull herself out, got engaged and realized, I can't get engaged. Gentleman becomes a little bit of abusive. She was able to get away, move with her parents, stay with her parents, and was okay. Unfortunately, one night, this gentleman laid in wait for her, found her coming home by herself, strangled her, killed her, and then killed himself.
That's unfortunate.
And when I thought about that, and I think about so many folks, the women and the men who are living in abusive relationships and think there's no way out, for us to find avenues to curb the behavior up front, but if it's in the throes of it happening, send a lifeline to folks to find them a way out that door.
So whose responsibility is it? Who do you think bear the responsibility to educate, to inform, to help create avenues for those folks that are subjected to this type of behavior to help them find a way out?
It's all of us. And it may sound like a cop-out to say that, but it truly is all of us. And I think it starts by us not turning a blind eye to things we see. I've seen on YouTube videos, on the internet, I've seen folks get in fights, clearly a domestic relationship fight, and I'll see 10 people videotaping it, but no one jumping in to tell them to stop. Yeah. And I think regardless if it's a structural program, whether that's governmental, whether that's educational, all that are necessary. It also is each and every one of us who are willing to step in the way and tell folks this isn't right. One of the unsung heroes of my life was a former janitor at my school. And when I was in elementary school, and the janitor used to talk to all of us young boys, and we were Catholic school in Germantown in Philadelphia, about our responsibility as future men to protect our women. Mm-hmm. And the janitor told us all the time, he's like, it doesn't matter if that's your girl, your sister, your aunt, your mother. It could be someone else's sister, aunt, girlfriend, wife, or mother. And you need to say something and step in the way and do it. Now, he's telling us 6th, 7th, 8th graders about the responsibility that we have to our women, not just from a cultural standpoint, but from a man's standpoint.
Right. If you see something, say something.
Exactly. And not to sit back and just allow it to happen. And I think all of us have an obligation, if we're going to truly correct this and bend this, for all of us to step in the way and say we're going to do something.
And I've heard you speak about, and that's great. Thank you for your views on that. I've heard you comment on concerns around animal abuse as well. Share with me what your thoughts are there.
Pretty simply, I mean, we have, animals can't speak for themselves, right, in a basic sense. And if you look at some of the psychological data, and I've had a chance to read a lot of, whether it's FBI reports or different things, they talk about folks who ultimately become more physically harmful to adults later in life, or not even later in life sometimes. A lot of times they start with being malicious and abusive toward animals. And also further, when you think about it, as one of God's creatures and creations, who can't step up and speak for themselves,
we bear a responsibility.
Absolutely. We bear a responsibility to speak for those who can't speak for themselves. The same way we fight for our youngest children, the same way we fight for our fellow citizens in their sunset years, to make sure that people are fighting for them. That's how I feel about the animal piece. And having grown up around pets and cats and dogs and all this other stuff, it matters to me, because a lot of times when we couldn't go outside, right? We couldn't go outside because my parents were like, I can't have you outside. Those were the friends that you had, right? Those were the friends. You never forget that. So the idea of being able to safeguard and protect our animals is something that is really important.
It stays with you.
Yeah.
So tell me about a piece of legislation that you're perhaps most proud of, that you have been a part of, or that you think has been most impactful to date.
Yeah. So one proposal that always strikes me, and it's because of my grandfather. So I never had the privilege of meeting either my mother's father or my father's father. Both passed away before I was born. My mother's father was a World War II veteran, served in the Navy at a time where African American naval sailors, were not fully appreciated for what they could do. Mm-hmm. And I remember hearing the stories from my mom about my grandfather talking about his service and talking about how it meant a lot to him, sometimes to a country that didn't sort of mean it back.
Appreciate.
And I got a feel for that. And one of the bills that we've worked on that became law early on in my career that I'm most proud of combines not just that, but also from my labor side, was our Helmets to Hard Hat program. And the Helmets to Hard Hat program, which we were able to codify, was a pilot program that individuals returning from service and war, we would find an opportunity to get them plugged into building trade construction unions, get them trained up through the apprentice program, and actually placed on job sites. The proposal we did, the pilot program, was going to go through the Turnpike Authority. At the time when I was elected in 2011, I had recently served as one of our state's youngest commissioners of the New Jersey Turnpike Authority. And during the economic downturn and the throes, that was one of the places that was still building, the widening of our New Jersey Turnpike, to be exact.
Right.
So we knew we had work. And what better way to honor those who are coming home from defending our freedom than to find opportunities to help them transition into meaningful careers in construction.
So you knew the work was there,
Absolutely.
but you had to do things to create the opportunity such that those individuals would be able to take advantage of that work. But there was some training that
Absolutely.
needed to take place.
So we had to make sure that individuals who wanted to do this, screened properly to be able to do this, to tie them to apprentice programs from the building trade unions, but most importantly, guarantee them. And that was the key, to guarantee them on the back end of coming through this apprentice program, we were going to put you to work on a project.
And do you consider that to be a success today?
Oh, it has been. It has. I go and I've talked to so many folks at VFWs and union halls who I know have gone through the program, whether it's through the Carpenter program, which I know well as a member of the Carpenters Union, or other unions, and talk to them. And I know they worked on projects. And construction is one of the few jobs that you work yourself out of work, right? You put yourself on the unemployment line by what you're doing. But these guys are like, you know what? I can point to things that I built. So, yeah, I worked on that turnpike wide. Now, yeah, the Garden State Parkway between this exit and that, I did that. And to know I had a small role to play in making that happen as a tribute to my grandfather, who I didn't know as a World War II vet, means a lot to me.
That's great. So throughout the course of our conversation, you've mentioned a couple of individuals that were influential to you. Your grandfather, you mentioned the janitor at your school. I'm going to switch it up a little bit. Tell me what your 18-year-old self would think about who you are today.
So that's a great question. My 18-year-old self.
I know what mine would think about me, but I want to hear about yours first.
So my 18-year-old self would look at me and probably say two things. One, I didn't expect you to be in public service, because my 18-year-old self wanted to be in corporate America. I wanted to work on Wall Street. I wanted to make a ton of money, and that's all I cared about was wearing a suit to work.
Right,
that was it.
Right.
That part I got right. You still get to wear a suit.
You got the suit.
That's the
right.
only part.
Right.
But I think my 18-year-old self would also be appreciative of how the transformation between 18-year-old me to 46-year-old me has brought me to this path of public service and trying to make a difference in the lives of my neighbors and my state. And I think my 18-year-old self would be proud of that, because no longer am I chasing just self-gratification and the almighty dollar, that's what I wanted to do then. Having grown up in a household where, you know, some days there was food insecurity, some other days you knew my dad was getting laid off at the end of the year because the factory had to close and had to deal with all that. And I think my 18-year-old self would look now and say, you know what, the redirection of your life has been more purposeful and more impactful. And I'd hope that my 18-year-old Troy Singleton would be proud of 46-year-old Troy Singleton.
Do you think he would have been mature enough to critically think like that?
No. That 18-year-old joker was worried about the next party at Rowan University.
So as you look out, what's ahead for Senator Troy Singleton?
Oh, man. Now, this is going to sound like a total cop-out. But you know what? I don't think about whatever comes next. I think if you do the job right in the job you're in, the next opportunity will find you. And I hope my career in public service still has some more miles to go. So there's still some more things I'd like to accomplish. But if it ends at this next election or the election after that, we've done some things that I know I can point back on and know I've impacted folks' lives for the good. It made things better for them. So, and until the next opportunity is tapped on my shoulder and is presented to me, Lord willing, we're just going to work as hard as we can in the job we got.
Well, Senator, please accept my sincere thanks for being a part of today's discussion. You know, as we all continue our efforts to be here for good, you've given us some fresh perspectives to consider, and I thank you for your thoughts.
Thank you so much. Let me just say this, the work that you all are doing, Virtua, which is our largest healthcare provider in South Jersey, has taken this mission and its thoughts of being a community leader in a community hospital to a level that's been unprecedented, at least in my time being here in Southern New Jersey, trying to be impactful to folks, not just when they come into your hospital, but to get them before they get here. That's how we change, and that's how we become purposeful in the lives of so many people. So I'm honored to be here with you, my friend.
Well, Senator, my thanks. Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Here for Good. If you liked what you heard, please leave us feedback and share our podcast link with others. Until next time, be well, everyone.